Welcome to my gallery. One of the great things about Hot Wheels is how do you name the car? Because the names of the cars were cool. Noodle Head, Heavy Chevy. Here's an example. Do you call this car Chrome Dome because of all the chrome? Or do you call it Noodle Head? The kids voted. They said Noodle Head. Isn't that amazing? And this document was based back in 1969. You know, before you make a car, engineers have to make a blueprint. This is one of the first of the 16 cars made in 1968. This particular car is the Corvette, and it's the actual blueprints to make the bottom of the car. I have about 12 of the first 16 cars blueprints dated 1967 or 1968. They're like the Dead Sea Scrolls of the hobby. The designers were always deciding, how do you make the car look? So they made one version with 2 engines and one version with 1, and Mattel's cost people said, let's make the 1 engine, we'll save a couple pennies. Designers would come up with cool designs. Here's a car, it was a beer carrier. And then Mattel said, you know what? We really shouldn't have beer on the side of a touring car. So they changed it to the teetotaler, somebody who doesn't drink. Isn't it ironic how that came out? When a lot of people got their Farrah Fawcett posters, my mom wouldn't let me. But I was allowed to get a Hot Wheel poster. And then I found this poster, but I realized later it didn't have the Hot Wheels imprint. The reason is, this is the actual original artwork used that Mattel had commissioned to make the actual posters they sold to the public. Great things about Hot Wheels, you could go to gas stations. These are original banners from gas stations back in 1970. Here's another banner. They would actually, in those days, fill your car up with gas and you get a Hot Wheel for 69 cents. I met the main artist who did most of the box work for Mattel. His name was Odo Cooney. And when he passed away, I was able to purchase his estate of all the extra artwork. So if you see a box like this, and then you see artwork like this, with all these colors on the top, that means this is a printer's proof. This was sent to the artist, and he said, I approve the colors, and then they would make millions of these boxes. I interviewed over 400 former Mattel employees, and went to a total of California probably about 35 different times over the last 25 years to acquire collections from people when they either passed away or time to get rid of it. I wanted to learn how the company operated as a company, and my specialty is from these employees I bought a lot of cars that were prototypes, and I really wanted to learn how cars were made, and I eventually wrote a book on the history of Mattel and prototypes. Hot Wheel Prototypes is the name. It's on Amazon, $29.95. Pinball machine made in 1986 in Italy by a company called Zaccaria. Not too many of these are left. A lot of people who bought Hot Wheels remember the famous case. There's the famous case. Right next to it, in clear plastic, is the original prototype. Mattel would make their prototypes in clear plastic because if it had items inside, the engineers could see what's inside. In Germany, they didn't call them Hot Wheels, they called them Heißreiter. This is an original store display from Germany if you walked in a store back in 1970. Hot Wheels even had bubble gum. Here's an original 1-cent bubble gum. Each of these little bubble gums has a name of a Hot Wheel on it. I don't think I'd try it because it's been over 50 years, but that's cool. Here is the original poster display. I mentioned to you earlier about posters. You could, instead of Farrah Fawcett, you can get your Hot Wheels poster. You got a whole series of different versions you can get. This is the actual original cardboard display. When I was researching the history of the company, I found out that Mattel got so many orders for Hot Wheels in 1968, they didn't have enough engineers to actually make it. So they went to a third-party company. I tracked down the third-party company. I said, did you keep anything? He says, I kept all the paper files. So I have hundreds of files for all the backup paperwork to make the Hot Wheels. So for example, this is a never-released car called the Aeroplane, but I actually have all the documentation to prove how it was made. Let's go to the other room. I love everything about the 60s and 70s when I grew up, including the bicycles. You may remember a bike that had what's called a sissy bar in the back so you won't fall off. You may remember what's called orange crate. Schwinn made those bikes. They're highly collectible today. Then jump over here. In 1979, Hot Wheels sold their Hot Wheels like Matchbox did in boxes. 1 year only. This is one of the only 10 known complete sets in the world of every Hot Wheel that came out from Japan in 1979. Over here is a gas station banner. So you literally, this would be in front of a gas station in 1971. Come get your free car, fill up with gas. One of the first Hot Wheels made in 1968 was called the Python. It was based on a model car, and you can see the model kit of that car. Well, I discovered the actual car became in disrepair, was able to notify the owner, and ended up buying the 2 fenders from the first Hot Wheel ever made. But I can beat that. Over here, in 1968, Mattel released a car called the Hot Heat, based on a 1913 hot rod car with a Corvette engine. That car it was based on won the Grand Nationals in 1964. Here it is right here. Bought it from the owner of a TV show called, what was that called? Richard Rawlings. And he had his own TV show, and this was his car, his favorite car. And this was the car in 1964 that won the Grand Nationals. Here's one of the 16 Fender guitars made back in 2004, just based on the history of Hot Wheels, because the first year Hot Wheels 16 cars were made. Over here is one of the 100 Tony Hawk skateboards that was made with a collaboration with Mattel. I don't know if you've ever been to Atlantic City. That's the famous House of Submarines, White House Subs it's called. That sign dates from 1946. This neon sign from a Ford dealership in the Washington area from the 1930s and early 40s. And my favorite, if you're from Washington, D.C. area, Wheaton, Maryland, Little Taverns, hamburgers, buy them by the bag. That's the original 1959 neon sign. One of my clients actually asked if he could have his kid's bar mitzvah party here.
No way.
And I said, you got a deal. So we had a bar mitzvah party here. I've had other clients come here, and I've also done a lot of fundraisers in here. Like to turn it out for good use. Hot Wheels made a car that looked like a toilet seat. It was called the Hot Seat. Here is the original Hot Seat, made by a local guy named David Goldberg. And what I can do is I can turn left and right. Hope he doesn't see this video, I'll get in trouble. But one of the cool things about it is I can sweep off the Hot Wheel off the floor like a Zamboni. And if I need to put it in reverse, I just flush. Now, one of the greatest things though is we do have a horn. God forbid there's a kid in the way. So we have this emergency horn. Get out of the way. The most appropriate horn for a toilet. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm always on the hunt, buying and selling. I do get a lot of calls from, unfortunately now that I'm in my 60s, a lot of collectors in the 70s and 80s are starting to pass away. So what I'm doing is I'm buying collections from other people and then end up selling them, and you don't get rich. It's worth it. You make less. I could sell all these and make less money than one real estate deal, but this is fun and it's my hobby.
Yeah.
And that's what I do to help support, pay the utility bills here and keep this place going.